Hello fellow mortals, welcome back to Golden RPG. Today we're gonna talk about one of the best leveling builds at the moment, but it's been forgotten. The Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian. Let's buckle up. The Barbarian Hammer of the Ancients build is a powerful and versatile build that can be used to deal massive damage to enemies. The build revolves around the Hammer of the Ancients skill, which allows the Barbarian to throw 3 hammers at enemies, dealing damage and knocking them back. The build also includes a number of other skills that can be used to increase damage, survivability, and crowd control. It's a great choice for players who want to play a powerful and versatile barbarian. The build is also good for players who want to play a build that is easy to learn and use. To get the most out of the Hammer of the Ancients build, you need to find the right items. The best items for this build are those that increase your strength, vitality, and fury. The gear setup includes specific stats on weapons, gloves, rings, and amulets to maximize damage output and survivability. Focus on these stats on the helmet and tunic. The best stat would always be cooldown reduction and any kind of defense like damage reduction, armor, or heal. Get some fury when you see them. Don't forget these effects. Fury is the main stat on this build and it will grant you fortify. Can't say no to that extend berserking, right? Now for our gloves. These are the exact stats you want on your glove. We have a lucky hit chance attack speed, critical strike chance, and Hammer of the Ancients. These are the basic 4 main stats you want on your gear if you could pick them. And our aspect is the aspect of retribution. If you find one with a max roll, make sure you don't lose it because this gives you a ton of extra damage on this build. Because we're stunning enemies all the time, this gives us a 20 to 40% increase in damage to stunned enemies. Next on our leg, just get more damage reduction. Any kind that your character is lacking, that gives us more survivability. And one thing you have to have on your pants or your helmet or something is the aspect of numbing wrath, because it's vital for this build to stay alive. And then for our boots, you just want Ghost Walker's aspect on these boots, so that way you get that wall unstoppable for 4 seconds after you get 25 movement speed and can move freely throughout enemies. And again, these are the ideal stats you basically want on your boots, very cost effective as you can get strength berserk duration and movement speed. For both 2-hand or 1-hand weapons, the primary focus is your DPS. You want your DPS to be as high as possible and that's going to just scale with your item level. But this is essentially a great road item. We would want vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, and you can do core skill damage or close enemy damage. It doesn't matter. Besides all the other aspects, this one is the most important, the aspect of Ancestral Force, so that our Hammer of the Ancients quake outward dealing 100% of its damage to enemies, which gives us a ton of damage. This is the main aspect here for our damage dealing, giving us these huge crits, but you want to make sure you have these obviously. Then for our ring, again we have the Bold Chieftain's ring here. I just like this because it reduces our cooldowns very quickly. You get these shout skills to generate fury here. From your aspect of equivalent fury on your ring, that's also very good because that gives us a positive fury generation of all the time. Same thing on both of them, you want max fury critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, and critical strike chance. And then finally, our amulet here. It's really lucky if you get that +3 rank defensive, but in case luck doesn't smile on you, don't worry. Keep the focus on cooldown reduction or fury cost reduction, movement speed, or any kind that provides agility. Let's take a look again before we get to the next chapter. There are many stats and status effects that generate on gear. Here are some stats you need to focus on. Critical strike chance, critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, core skill damage, overpower damage, strength and maximum fury are huge damage boosts, so stack them as much as possible. But the most important is the aspect of an item. You must get it right to maximize this building's power. Damage reduction in all of its forms, damage reduction from close enemies, armor, and element resistance to all elements as well. Movement speed on boots. You gotta move. The Hammer of the Ancient skill is a powerful AoE damage dealer that is a staple of many barbarian builds. It is particularly effective against large groups of enemies as it can knock them back and deal significant damage in a short amount of time. Building around that playstyle a ton of insurance, let's take a look at Hammer of the Ancient's barbarian skill tree. The first one is very simple. Ground Stomp stuns nearby enemies for 3 seconds and deals a small amount of damage. You can also replace this skill with Steel Grasp or Iron Maelstrom, any kind of skill that provides CC. And the next skill is Rallying Cry, which increases your speed and generation for a short time. On Modify option, get Tactical Rallying Cry, which not only makes you unstoppable, but also increases your generation. This will help your character never run out of fury. And then a Mighty War Cry increases your damage dealt by at least 15% and berserking after getting enchanted. If more than 6 enemies are hit by War Cry, your damage bonus is increased by an additional 10% or more. Challenging Shout is one of our main defensive buffs that also regenerates fury when we get hit. This is very powerful as we are in the melee range all the time and spend fury while smashing with Hammer of the Ancients. Hammer of the Ancients is a heavy hitting core skill. It simply slams the hammer down and deals damage around. Nothing special. It shines when combined with Enhanced Hammer of the Ancients to regain fury, and Furious Hammer of the Ancients for even more deadly attacks at full resources. Lunging Strike is your movement skill and it also heals you small amounts when hitting an enemy. Last but not least, Key Passive's Unbridled Rage increases your core skill and deals 135% increased damage but costs 100% more fury. Besides that, remember to use this expertise. The two-handed mace is our main weapon of choice since Hammer of the Ancients requires a two-handed bludgeoning weapon. While the critical strike damage multiplier offered by its arsenal bonus might seem highly situational at first glance, we are built to take advantage of it more often than not, since we are constantly afflicting our enemies with stun and vulnerable effects through multiple sources. Use Challenging Shout, War Cry, and Rallying Cry. This is the preferred order since it allows Challenging Shout to come off cooldown first thanks to Bold Chieftain's aspect. This is important because it is one of the best sources of damage reduction. Approach enemies with Lunging Strike to both generate fury. Use Ground Storm to incapacitate as many enemies as possible. The area of effect of this skill is rather small and thus requires some good positioning to get the most out of it. Enemies that are close to the very center of the impact will be knocked down while the rest are stunned. Ideally, we want the latter result, so against elites especially, it's important to aim off center to them to try and ensure they are put under this status. Now it's time to smash your enemies with Hammer of the Ancients. To maximize your damage, try to hit as many monsters as possible and keep your fury up for the full effect of Edge Masters and Furious Hammer of the Ancients. We need to level up our glyphs to activate the additional bonus with surrounding nodes. As you know, because glyphs at level 15 increase their radius, we need to prioritize leveling them by completing nightmare dungeons. After that, we prioritize leveling our strongest glyphs to level 21. The first one is Wrath. For every 5 dexterity purchased within range, you'll get increased critical strike damage. Reaching 25 dexterity on allocated Paragon nodes gains you a buff. Whenever you hit an enemy with critical skill generates 3 fury. For the next one, Exploit Glyph increase your damage to vulnerable targets for every 5 dexterity purchased within range. Reaching 25 dexterity on allocated Paragon nodes within its radius unlocks a new passive. When an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds, but remember, this passive cannot happen more than once every 20 seconds per enemy. With the Territorial Glyphs, for every 5 dexterity purchased within range, you deal increased damage to close targets. Reaching 25 dexterity on allocated Paragon nodes within its radius provides a 10% damage reduction against close enemies. The fourth one increase your damage while healthy. Reaching requirement provides the following additional bonus that helps you heal more. Must be like the last one, Undaunted increases your damage while fortified. At 25 willpower, you gain damage reduction the more fortified you have. Only with these glyphs, reaching requirements are must-do. After casting a shout skill, the active cooldown of every other shout skill is reduced by 1.2 seconds. That's all the glyphs you will need, but remember, the priority depends on your glyphs level. If you can get them to level 21, try to reach them by this order: Wrath, Exploit, Imbiber, Territorial, Undaunted, and Martial. The Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian build is a powerful and versatile build that can be used to clear both trash mobs and bosses. The build revolves around using the Hammer of the Ancients skill to deal massive damage to enemies. To use the skill effectively, you'll need to generate fury by attacking enemies, using your shouts, or picking up fury orbs. You can also use other skills to support your build, such as Rend, Whirlwind, and Battle Rage. With a little practice, you'll be able to master the Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian build and wreak havoc on your enemies. This build also benefits a lot from this season. The Malignant here are some best in slot Cage Hearts you should aim for. Cage Heart of Focus Rage. After spending 100 to 60 fury within 2 seconds, your next non-basic skill's critical strike chance is increased. Cage Heart of the Malignant Pact. Cycle through a Malignant bonus every 20 kills. Cage Heart of the Barber. Critical strike and all subsequent damage within 2 to 4 seconds is absorbed by your target. Then, the absorbed damage erupts onto surrounding enemies. Stored damage is increased by 10% per second. While not the best at doing it, the Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian is, in fact, Nightmare Dungeon Tier 100 viable. Here are some things to consider if attempting this push. Avoid these Nightmare Dungeon affixes. Crowd Control Resist, Melee Defenders, Armor Breakers, Backstabbers, Drifting Shade, Death Pulse, Stormbane's Wrath, Volcanic, Resource Burn. Once again, the Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian is a strong melee build that controls the battlefield. It is very beginner-friendly since Fury costs much more manageable than other core Barbarian skills. Lunging strike away into battle, deliver that earth-shaking ground stomp, and pretend it's the 80s as the hammer swings down. Let's take a look at this clear on Nightmare Dungeon Tier 50.
I must wait. I'm low on fury. I'm out of fury. I need more time.
That's it for today's build. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos. See ya!